Now, this illustration deals with grounding of panel boards in accordance with NEC 408.40. Now, many times, even today, once in a while, I'll receive a call from a young electrician or sometimes maybe even an older electrician, and they are wanting to know about where do we go in the code to determine isolating the neutral bar and taking the grounded bar and connecting it into the enclosure and letting the raceway system with an equipment ground maybe serve as my grounding scheme. We know if we route from one building to another building, we have to have this hookup now without its existing. We know from a transformer, if we tap off of the secondary side of a transformer fed from the service equipment, that we have the same rule. So where in the code do we go to find the language that says this is what you do? Well, it's NEC 408.40. And then you start at the service. So say the grounding electrode conductor from that common bar that you see in the service equipment with a grounded conductor coming to it, it's bonded to the enclosure, and you have a grounding electrode conductor connected into the electrode. You'd say, well, I'm connecting it to the structural steel. And let's just use 4-aught. We've been using that through many of the chapters. So 4-aught's terminating to 225 amp main in the service equipment. So as we previously stated, if we're connecting the grounding electrode conductor to a structural steel system or to a metal water pipe system that serves as an electrode, then we know it would be number 2 from table 250.66. Now, since we have an overcurrent device ahead of the conductors feeding that panel to the right, and say that it was, and we'll just say this, say that it's a 200 amp main. Now we know since there's an overcurrent device ahead of those conductors, we would have to reference table 250.122, and based upon 200 amps, it's either number 6 or number 4. Mine's kind of escaping me here on which is correct, but it's either number 6 or number 4. I believe it's number 6, so it'd have to be pulled over there as an equipment ground, pull through that metal raceway if that be the case. But the grounding scheme, selecting the metal raceway, say, and an equipment ground would be 250.118 of the code. To color code it or identify it, we would reference 250.119. And if it was number 6 or smaller, then the state inspector, county inspector, city inspector will usually require it to be green its entire length for number 6 or smaller. If it's number 4 larger, they'll allow you to identify it by spraying the insulation green, taping it green, or any method acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction. But notice we show redundant grounding. We're pulling an equipment ground in accordance with 250.118 and 250.148 of the code. The wiring method that we selected from 300.17, the informational note, it's either rigid metal conduit, IMC, or EMT, or some metal type raceway, or metal clad cable such as AC cable or MC cable. So we have redundant grounding here. But we could also use Romex, non-metallic conduit. When I say Romex, non-metallic sheath cable or rope, depending on the part of country you're from, or a type of MC cable where it requires an equipment ground, and table 250.122 is going to size that equipment ground based upon the size of the overcurrent device. And as I pointed out, if that's a 200 amp overcurrent device, it's either number 6 equipment ground or number 4 chosen and selected from table 250.122 based upon the 200 amp main that's ahead of those conductors. So figure 7-19 is illustrating the grounding of that panel board to the right because it's inside the building, and the separation of the isolation of the neutral from the grounding bar is identified, illustrated, and outlined in 408.40. We illustrate it here, but the text is in 408.40.